Penn State beats Northwestern 41-13. Welcome in hardcore Penn State football. We'll be breaking down the latest win for Penn State as Penn State heads into the bye. But first, here's 4 minutes of advertising. No, I'm just kidding. We'll get into the show in a second. Please make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. And if you're listening on podcasts, wherever you're listening on podcasts. See you guys in 1 second. You like that?
Oh, that was great. That was great. Those who know.
If you're on YouTube, make sure to say hi. Welcome in, everybody. Ooh, welcome in hardcore Penn State football. I'm Cory Lestochi. With me, as always, the great Shawn Kane. How are you doing today, Shawn?
I've had better Mondays. I was all right with the Penn State game overall. I mean, we have a whole 2 hours to talk about it. God, the Miami Dolphins let me down. I know I shouldn't be let down by the Miami Dolphins because they did Dolphin things yesterday, but I was like, God almighty. So I've had better Mondays. I've also had worse Mondays. So there are Mondays that exist for Penn State and Dolphins both lose, and those are the worst.
I got absolutely spanked my fantasy leagues because of Tua, Waddle, and Hill not really doing what they needed to do. And I also had a 4-team NFL parlay or 3-team NFL parlay, and the Dolphins just had to keep it within like 6, and they couldn't even do that.
Yeah, I mean, the defense was even worse than the offense, and the offense didn't get the job done either. But hey, this ain't the Miami Dolphins podcast. It is hardcore Penn State football, and we have a lot of stuff to talk about today, Cory.
Yeah, we do. I want to give a shout out to friend of the pod, Joe Hermit. If you saw on Saturday, he was the cameraman that got ran over in that play in the end zone. I think he ended up having to go, like, he was able to stay for the rest of the game, but then he went to the hospital. I think he got stitches.
Yeah, I saw that on Twitter. You know, it seems like really close quarters there because there's that big hill.
Yes.
And then the photographers have about, a few yards between the field of play and where they take pictures. So it's a very dangerous setup, if you ask me.
Yeah, and if anybody knows Joe Herman, he's the one who wears the knee pads. He really likes getting low and kind of having the players above them. So, like, people that are like, oh, just go on the hill. Well, you can't just go on the hill because that kind of ruins shots he likes to take.
Picture. Yeah.
So, but I think he's doing all right. I was shot him a text today, and it seems like he's in good spirits. So, but shout out to him. I also wanted to say shout out to Mike Poorman, who was able to get to and from the game on Saturday in a 19-hour trip. He left his house, drove to the Harrisburg airport, took the first flight at like 5 a.m. from Harrisburg to Chicago, went to the game, got the 6:30 flight back from Chicago to Harrisburg, and when it was in his house at like a decent time on Saturday night. So that's pretty damn impressive. Risky, you got to hope for no storm delays, no overtimes, no delays getting out there. I guess you don't really have to worry about the delays coming back because, at that point it doesn't matter. But still, pretty impressive to get to and from Pennsylvania and cover a Penn State football game in 19 hours. So that's pretty impressive.
Very impressive. Yeah, I was listening to the Blue White Illustrated pod this morning, and Sean Fitz didn't get home till late last night.
Oh, really?
I think when you fly through one of those big airports like Chicago or Atlanta, Philadelphia, it's a crapshoot. You never know what's going to happen. And I think it's easy to fall victim to that. So for Mike Foreman to come here in 19 hours, that's very, very impressive.
Yeah. I will say I flew out of Atlanta obviously a lot when we lived in Alabama. And Atlanta, at least, I never really obviously connected through Atlanta very often, but getting out of Atlanta, I never really seem to have that many issues. Atlanta's pretty good. Obviously a huge Delta hub there. But anyway, Penn State wins the football game 41-13. Sean, I was not at this game, nor was I at something else. I was actually able to like watch the football game. I went over to a friend's house to watch it. But this is the first time like I had my phone around me during the game that I was paying attention to Twitter. And I just want to say that you do a fantastic job on Twitter because I was just saw some of the replies, especially in that first half, and I was like, I want to call and quote tweet and dunk on every single one of these people. And so I got to give you a lot of credit for having the wherewithal to not necessarily do that. Although I feel like we dunk on people quite a bit that need to be dunked on. But just the takes were flying in, Sean, pretty quickly there. I think officially we have our first like Drew Aller sucks bench him of this season. So we made it to October and we got our first bench Drew Aller, which we knew was coming. It's always inevitable. Like it doesn't matter how awesome of a quarterback you are coming in, at some point, somebody is going to want you benched. It didn't even, and unfortunately for Drew Aller, it didn't even take an interception. Like whoever that person was, not, obviously probably not the smartest opinion, then it wasn't even because of an interception or what. Like, I mean, I wouldn't know that person was a fan back when Anthony Morelli was here. Like, how did they survive when Morelli was throwing back-to-back pick sixes? So, anyway, I just was like, oh man, I'm so glad I'm not in charge of like live tweeting this game right now. And I just sat back. I think I made one or two comments on my own personal Twitter, but otherwise just kind of enjoyed the game. But credit to you, Sean. That's a different, people are pretty like calm, I feel like, during the week relatively. But in the moment, people had a couple beers in them. It's a whole different ball game.
Yeah, and sometimes things could get like not good, and that is it an opinion I agree with? No, not at all. I don't agree that Jalen should be benched, but it's still an opinion, and I could engage with an opinion. But sometimes people get really mean and say some pretty bad things, and that stuff I just ignore, and I'm just like keep scrolling. And I do try to engage with people who are giving takes. Some of them are good. Sometimes I get a take here and there that makes me think, and I'll like it and quote tweet it and talk about how, oh yeah, I didn't really think of that, and yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, it's hot take season during a football game, and it's because we all care so much, and the emotions get high, and there's the uncertainty. But yeah, it was interesting on Saturday, but the game itself was interesting on Saturday. So I could see why there are a variety of different opinions and people seeing the game differently.
There's no doubt people see the game differently.
Yeah,
Sometimes I'm not sure I'm watching the same game. But yeah, I thought I had something else to add to that, but now that thought has escaped me. But Penn State won. It was probably not the ugliest 41-13 win, but you didn't necessarily feel like it was a 41-13 when it was all said and done. And I know it was a last second touchdown because 34-13 really does feel like more like what the score should have been. That being said, what's weird to me is how good the defense still played, and I still don't necessarily feel good about it, right? They allowed 175 yards against Northwestern, which is just insane because they just held Iowa to 75 the previous week, and Northwestern only got 100 more, and they were playing at home. So just really is incredible what they've been able to do. You may kind of wonder, like, if Northwestern was at Penn State for the whiteout, like how close would they have been to that 100-yard mark if they had to play in those situations? You know what I mean? So just impressive in that point. I always make the argument, and I was talking to our friend about this, home field advantage in college football is the most important like home field advantage you can have in all sports. Like college game, I think in general, like college basketball, college football more than professional sports. But even so, like NFL teams can win on the road. And playoff might be a little bit different, but regular season, winning on the road, I don't think is insanely difficult for most places in the NFL. In college football, just playing at home versus playing on the road is a huge difference. First of all, in the Big Ten, you don't get to take as many people with you. which just that alone is completely different, right? Penn State had to play a lot more starters in this one because they literally didn't have a bunch of backups, only allowed to take 52 people with them. And on top of that, the cadence and letting that offensive line kind of settle in and not having to worry about the noise is crazy important. Like we thought that Northwestern line struggled with Penn State's defensive line at home. Can you imagine they're in a whiteout environment and they had to go silent count every time? Like it would have been even worse than it was. And Penn State ended up with 7 sacks on the day. I couldn't imagine how many they would have got to if that game was at home. But I guess that's my point was usually the offense is able to have a little bit more flow. And besides one drive where Penn State kind of gave it to them as far as tackling, Northwestern couldn't do anything offensively. And I know like most of the pod today, we're going to talk about the defense, or excuse me, talk about the offense. But I just wanted to start by at least positively shouting out the defense because there was opportunities based off of what the offense wasn't doing and what the special teams early wasn't doing to really let Northwestern stay in the game. And Penn State's defense really didn't let that happen.
Yeah, I mean, it was a 10-10 game until nearly the middle of the third quarter. And that's not what you want when you're playing against a team like Northwestern, who is not very good at football. But yeah, the defense was unbelievable again. And yeah, they had the one drive. There were some issues tackling. I think there was a penalty or two on the drive as well. So, but again, that's going to happen, especially when your offense really isn't doing anything. Special teams outside of Alex Falcons and shout out to Riley Thompson for that great hold. They didn't really help much either. They put the defense in a very difficult spot to start the game, and with Nick Singleton fumbling the opening kickoff. But the defense again, they kind of set the tone early. I think Northwestern started the drive at the 11-yard line and netted -4 yards. Now they made the field goal. We were down 3-0 to start the game. Not what you want, but even against a bad team on the road, when they're starting at the 11-yard line, a lot of times they're going to score a touchdown because they're riding off that momentum pregame. There's a there's sudden momentum. Sudden change. That's something you hear James Franklin preach a lot, is a sudden change. And the defense was just like, okay, no problem. And really mitigated the damage that could have been caused. So yeah, they deserve a ton of credit. And I know we're gonna, like Cory said, I know we're gonna get a lot into the offense today. I'm sure most of the questions have to do with the offense because a lot of our biggest question marks are on the offensive side of the ball. But we have statistically the best defense in the country right now. So I want Penn State fans to appreciate that and realize that, because there's nobody playing better defense right now. Now competition's going to pick up, but that's what the numbers tell us right now.
Yeah, and competition for those other defenses that are near Penn State hasn't really been that great either. Like you look at what Michigan and Ohio State have went up against. No, Ohio State has Notre Dame, but Michigan hasn't played anybody yet. And even like the likes of Georgia, you saw what Auburn was able to do against Georgia last week. So, I mean, there's just a certain level of confidence when the defense is on the field right now. I mean, they were blowing up plays left and right just so easily. I mentioned this last week. Like, when are Penn State fans going to admit that they have a good rush defense? And it's not going to be until they probably play Michigan or Ohio State, maybe Ohio State, but probably not even then.
It'll be Michigan.
But they held Northwestern, and this includes sack yardage, but they held Northwestern to 45 yards of rushing, 32 rushing attempts for 1.4 yards per rush. So not too shabby. I don't know how many times now they've held a team under 100 yards rushing, but Iowa, I think they held every Big Ten West opponent under 100 yards. I know Illinois is at like 60 something, and Iowa only had 75 total. So they held all 3 Big Ten West opponents, who usually are the more kind of grind you out teams, held all 3 of them to under 100 yards rushing.
Yeah. I was saying to my fiance, she asked what Big Ten West teams we play, and I was like, oh right, we played all of them. So we're all done with the Big Ten West. And all we got is UMass in the Big Ten East now, guys. It feels weird that we haven't played a Big Ten East team yet. And that will be the tougher part of the schedule. It's the toughest division, obviously. But yeah, we're 5 games through the season, so we're about halfway there. And yeah, I think now is the time that you really start understanding what your team is and what they do well and what they don't particularly do well. Now, and I think some of these numbers start to become real. So again, fourth in scoring defense. We're actually, do you know we're 12th in scoring offense? So we're still putting the ball in the end zone. Now,
Don't tell the haters that.
yeah, I mean, we still are scoring. So there's only Miami and Oklahoma rank in the top 12 in scoring offense and scoring defense. We are 32 in total offense, which we all want to see go up, but we're number 1 in total defense. So, I mean, the numbers begin to tell you a story that this team is going to win games by playing great defense and by grinding games out on offense. Now, could you win that way? Yes, Michigan did. Georgia did. So yes, there is a way to do this. We just need more from certain people. And we're going to get into it when we start breaking down the positions, but we just need a little bit more, but we're not far away from where we want to be.
Right. Killer B on YouTube, welcome into the show. He has 2 questions. One question we're actually going to get to in the fan question portion about Maryland, but real quick, since we're talking about it, like, how far away, or do you think Penn State's going to be able to stop the Michigan run game?
Well, Michigan's run game hasn't been as dominant as it was last year. So I do want to say that. And they've played nobody yet. They've played a softer schedule than Penn State has. And I think based on what I see right now, and maybe this will be a cold takes exposed, I feel all right against their defense, against their rushing offense. I was very concerned about middle linebacker. Kobe King has kind of put my mind at ease a little bit. I think he's played very, very well to start the season. The linebackers didn't have a great game against West Virginia. I think they've been better since West Virginia. I think they've gotten better as a unit. So right now, I feel okay getting ready for Michigan. And I know we all have the PTSD to a degree, but right now, being at Beaver Stadium and seeing how the defensive line and the linebackers have played, I feel pretty good.
Right now, Michigan is ranked 41st in rushing yards per game. Penn State's at 29. So take that for what you will. They do have a higher rushing yards per carry, but take that for what you will. Thanks, Killer B, for that. The last thing I want to say real quick on the defense, and we'll talk more specifics in a second. But I just wanted to say, as far as my bold prediction goes, the 7 sacks helps out tremendously. If you weren't here for the season preview show, my bold prediction was Penn State would get to 50 sacks. You get 7 sacks in a game, and all of a sudden that looks a little bit more feasible. Through 5 games now, Penn State is at 20 sacks on the year, averaging 4 sacks per game. So if they can just have one more big game like that, they'll actually be ahead of schedule. So they still have UMass. They still have Indiana. I don't, Talia Tagovailoa was hurt last year, so I assume Maryland's going to protect him a little bit better. But they had a big day against Maryland last year, and Michigan State's still on a schedule too. So you've got a couple more opportunities to maybe get into that range, but you kind of need another performance like that. Again, right now, you would, for me at least, you want to be at 25 sacks by the end of UMass, because then you're halfway there and halfway through the season. So, but Penn State's currently 3rd in the country, tied for 3rd in the country now with sacks so far, which James Madison, who just came from the FCS, actually leads the way of 23.
Could they play in a bowl yet?
No, which
That's
doesn't
so
make any
unfair.
sense to me.
Yeah.
Like, if you're playing well, why wouldn't you be allowed to play in a bowl game? Like, I understand if there was like a, I don't know, punishment for not making a bowl game. Don't let that affect them. But if they're playing well, why would you say no bowl? I don't know. I don't, maybe because they don't have the money to go to a bowl game or those expenses. I don't really know. I don't get it.
I think it's some rule.
It's a rule, but I don't understand the rule.
Nah, I don't get it either. Yeah, I mean the defense. The reason I wasn't worried much on Saturday, if at all, was the defensive ends. They could not block us. There was a lot of Chop Adisa and Denai Dennis Sutton on the field at the same time, and that's really why I felt like, nah, these guys aren't going to be able to keep up with us because they just couldn't block us. And eventually Ben Bryant did eventually he did unfortunately get injured. Zane Durant really lit him up.
Yeah,
and
planted him.
Yeah, that was I knew as soon as he hit him, I was like, ooh, that looks bad. So
yeah.
And to Ben Bryant's credit, I think he did his very best because he was under attack the entire game. And it was a lot like we predicted that, the quick passing game, it sounds good in theory, but when you're playing against an elite secondary and linebackers that aren't afraid to go after the ball, and defensive ends who are more than willing to knock balls down, it's easier said than done. So I think Penn State set the tone Penn State's defense set the tone from the very start, and they really didn't take their foot off the gas. They had one bad drive in the whole game, and that was it. And it was really on from there till like I said, the very end of the game.
So Sean, kind of switch gears just a little bit here. How much do you think the whiteout played a role coming in, going from 110,000 to now going into 25,000, which was the least attended game in James Franklin's tenure at Penn State, which is pretty insane. But how much do you think that played a role in the slow start? And I guess, do you have any thoughts on that? Because Penn State's not going to have a Northwestern atmosphere again this year. But at the same time, how much of an excuse really is it?
Well, for the first couple drives, I think it is. But it shouldn't be a tie game with like 10-ish minutes left in the third quarter. So and I think I tweeted this out, like the excuse, it is real that, yeah, okay, you're gonna have a slow start and things like the Singleton fumble, okay, and then the offense really being out of sorts, all right, but like the offense shouldn't be out of sorts like most of the game. It just shouldn't happen. So to answer your question, sort of, kind of, but not really.
Yeah, I kind of agree too, right? And I don't really know the answer to it. Mike Portman also had a good point that in 2016, Penn State was also tied with Purdue at the half at 10-10 before exploding in the second half. So
yes,
another decent point there too. The other point that he mentioned that I put,
and that
on
was
Twitter,
after the Ohio State game.
Correct.
Yep.
The other point that he mentioned was that Penn State's just not a first quarter team. In his article, he said that Penn State right now is at, I forget the exact, let's see here, 15.8% of Penn State's points so far have been in the first quarter. In 2016, only 13% of the points were scored in the first quarter. So I'm not ready to call them a second half team, but they are definitely not a first quarter team, if that makes sense. And I give a little bit of benefit, at least on the offensive side of things, because in Mike Yurcich's case, he's upstairs. You don't want to make a bunch of drastic changes until you get to halftime, if you need to make those. But there needs to be some tweaks, or at least more tweaks than what we've seen so far. But they do come out in the second half and play better ball. There is a football logical thing of not trying to change a bunch while you're on the sideline with a young quarterback. But there's other issues in this offense that have come up multiple times now that shouldn't take you a first half to realize that those need to be fixed.
Yeah, and a lot of the things are problems we've seen in previous games. It reminded me a lot of the Illinois game because we had a lot of the same issues, except they didn't have a Johnny Newman. But Drew, I mean, I think it's a thing. He's less accurate on the road than at home. Now, that's not unusual, but it's a big drop off. And that's something that he's got to get fixed. And just things like miscommunications. And, you could put more of that, I think, on the players, because that's a player problem, miscommunications. But yeah, I was very happy with the way we were prepared against Iowa. I wasn't as happy with the way we were prepared against Northwestern. And because first off, the 15-yard penalties have to stop. This is too much. It started with the Delaware game. We've had one every single week. Manny Diaz, according to people who were at the game, after Cam Miller got that unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, I guess he got in his face and really got after him. Franklin said it was ridiculous. Not that it was called. He said it was, I think he meant that it was ridiculous that it happened. So that makes me think this is something they've been trying to drive home, and then it happens anyway. And I think the coaches are upset about it, but it's one thing to be upset about. You got to fix it. So it's something that I want to see fixed in particular, because that could cost us in a close game.
Yeah, I just think of like the Florida shoegate where the guy threw the shoe. That gave LSU a first down. I think was it LSU? A first down?
Yeah.
It was LSU. A first down to win that game. Yeah, I didn't think the ball throwing was that big of a deal, to be honest with you. I get it. I guess you can't do it, but I don't think he was like throwing it at somebody or anything like that. I don't know. I don't really know what he was thinking, and I'm not trying to defend it too much, but it wasn't like he threw it into the stands or he like threw it at somebody. It looked like he just tossed it aside, like he wasn't thinking about it. Like they already had another ball and they just threw it. It didn't seem malicious or anything like that.
I mean, he threw it toward the sideline. I hear what you're saying. I don't know exactly if he was throwing it at him, but like, dude, just put the ball down. I mean,
No, yeah, I get that. Yeah, I mean, I see your point. I would have liked to see maybe a little bit of benefit of doubt from the officials there.
It didn't have to be called, absolutely, but it was,
Yeah, and you're right. It has been a trend. We have seen quite a bit of those penalties so far this year, and that one cost them 3 points. So I agree there. Other things I just wanted to mention real quick: Katron Allen left before the first half, came back without his helmet. From the broadcast, it looked like he was sick, like ill, like actually ill. I said that at the time. Maybe we'll find out more on Tuesday, but we'll have to keep an eye there. We mentioned
Is there a press conference tomorrow?
I think that, well, the coordinators are talking at least tomorrow.
Okay.
I don't know if James is talking or not. And now in hindsight, I feel like maybe he isn't, but the coordinators are, I'm pretty sure. JV Nelson left in a cart early in the game as well. Franklin said that he's back with the team, which you can interpret different ways. We weren't exactly sure what that meant as far as did he leave and now he's back? Did he just mean, he's back on the plane to go home? Like, I just felt like that was kind of a weird verbiage. And then, and maybe that's just too much looking in the tea leaves there. And then two other things. Trey Wallace came but didn't play, and Malik Mega came but didn't play. And also Malik McLean only had 1 snap. So just some interesting things there to note. Also should note that Amari Evans did have 31 snaps. So he played a little bit more. It seems like he's maybe getting a little bit healthier. But that's kind of the latest there as far as who came in, who didn't come in. And then the only other thing, Sean, is ball security. We saw Nick Singleton had the fumble on the opening kick, and we saw Shawn Allen also fumble it, and both were true fumbles. That could have cost Penn State some points. So don't know if don't know if Northwestern just has Penn State's number, because Nick Singleton probably has what, 3 or 4 fumbles now against Northwestern specifically.
I think 4, yeah. I think he fumbled 3 times last year.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy when you think about it that way. So how many fumbles we've had? Like what? 5 fumbles against Northwestern in the last 2 games, at least. And now I know it was a hurricane last game, but still, it's kind of crazy when you think about Northwestern, getting all those fumbles.
Yeah, and it's funny because we're not really a fumbling team. Like, Franklin really preaches ball security, and that's going all the way back to when he first got here. We just not a team that puts the ball on the ground a lot. But for whatever reason, we do against Northwestern. So thankfully, we don't play Northwestern again for the rest of the season. So hopefully that gets fixed. Yeah, JB Nelson, it would really suck to lose him. We'd be down to our 3rd left guard. And I thought Vega played all right, but it's just not what you want, because depth just keeps getting thinner and thinner at that guard spot. And eventually we're going to, we're probably going to have to start moving some guys around. You really don't want to do that. So, yeah, not really. I hope that's not as bad as it looked, but anytime a guy gets carted off, it's usually not good. So to state the obvious, yeah, Katron, it's probably not a bad thing that he was standing there with no helmet on, and didn't appear to have a limp or anything. I don't know when either guy got hurt, which is the strange thing. Like, I can't pinpoint the play that JB Nelson got hurt or Shawn Allen got hurt. I actually didn't realize he was hurt. A big mistake by me till after halftime. I didn't realize Shawn Allen was hurt, because I think I tweeted something out, and then Cory texted me, "Sean, Shawn's hurt." I was like, "Oh, my bad." So I didn't even notice. And so I thought that was a little peculiar. But hopefully both those guys are all right. Thankfully the bye week's coming up, and Harrison Wallace, hopefully he could get everything cleaned up by the time UMass comes, because I know we would like to rest guys we don't need against UMass, but Harrison Wallace has barely played in the last month, so I think he's a guy that you'd have to play as long as he could, as long as he's good enough to play against UMass.
Yeah, that's a good point, Sean, and maybe a good way to segue into the offense, because I think Drew Aller is a lot more comfortable when Harrison Trey Wallace is out there. And so UMass, I know it's a week and a half away, and we'll preview more of it, but UMass is the get right game you need it to be. Coming out of the bye, everything you worked on, all the self-scouting you're going to do, you have an opportunity to put that all together and absolutely throat punch UMass. And you kind of need that to get. And here's the thing. I thought about this, Sean, like all weekend. Like, do we need to see this offense be successful just so we can feel better about Ohio State, but the team feels good about where they are offensively? Or are we all struggling a little bit together? And it's probably somewhere in between. But I do not subscribe to this belief, and I think we have some fan questions on it, but I'm not on the belief that Mike Yurcich has a bunch of things up his sleeve still, because we're 5 games through the season. Now, does he probably have specific plays or formations or schemes that he thinks are going to work against Ohio State that they looked at over the summer? Probably, yes. Are you going to see some things variable? Yes. But your base offense is still your base offense. And so I'm a little concerned, and I'm just curious how concerned that they are. Are they like, oh crap, all right, we couldn't even really move the football against Northwestern. We couldn't break man coverage on 3rd and long against Northwestern. What are we going to do against Ohio State in those situations? Or are they like, hey, because there are times, Sean, where, and we'll show a little bit today, where there is an 8-man box and Penn State says, screw it, we're going to run right into it, inside zone into an 8-man box, which numbers tell you don't do it. And so part of me is like, are they just trying to do that to see if they can do it? Because in a lot of situations, you don't want to run into that. That's when you should check out of that and throw the ball. And sometimes, not just against Northwestern, but against a lot of teams, they're like, we're just going to run it right up. And honestly, sometimes they still had success. So I'm just kind of curious where their confidence is at. And in my mind, getting Trey Wallace back, at least for the passing game, would make me feel a lot better. I don't know about them specifically, but it'd make me feel a lot better.
I think their identity is their identity, and I think they want to be that ground and pound team, because I agree with you. I don't think Mike Gersich has these hidden plays for Michigan and Ohio State.
He's not saving all the touchdown plays for Ohio State and Michigan.
No, like he's not like, I'm going to save all the good plays for them and all the bad plays for Northwestern. Let's just see what happens. Like that's not really how coaches think. Coaches at least they should take every game seriously. And because you don't want to be the clowns that get upset by Northwestern and ruin the season. I mean, these guys are coaching for their jobs, every one of them. So you don't really think like that. Now, could there be some wrinkles? Of course. Yeah. So we could see a new player too, but I think you've seen most of the playbook, which, again, if you're watching, you're probably all thinking about the explosion, the firework plays. Where are they? And why aren't they? Why don't we see more? I think a lot of it is Drew Aller, to be honest with you. And there's a difference between being safe with the ball and playing within the offense and playing within yourself and being afraid to make mistakes. And I think he's teetering on that line of being afraid to make a mistake, and he shouldn't. Sometimes, like, I remember I'm going to bring Dolphins up, but it fits. Tua's rookie year, Ryan Fitzpatrick was his backup. And I remember Fitz said that he told Tua, sometimes you got to throw people open. And Drew Aller has a much better arm than Tua Tagovailoa. Sometimes you have to throw people open. Sometimes the window isn't going to look very big, but you have to trust yourself a little bit. Now, that doesn't mean be reckless, but don't be afraid to take a chance or two. And if you get intercepted once in a while, you get intercepted once in a while. Interceptions happen. Patrick Mahomes threw one last night. Is anybody calling for his head? No. So I think he's just got to trust himself more. And that could be fixed. That's something that could be fixed. And I don't think it's necessarily on Mike Yurcich. I think they're calling I think some of these shot plays are there, but Drew's a little bit trigger shy. Now, it could also be because the receivers aren't getting open as much as they should. So it's hard to say exactly, but I think he's got to trust his arm more and trust his receivers a little bit more to make a play.
Yeah, and we're going to show some examples of that today, because I think that's 100% right, Sean. I think you nailed it. I think it will benefit him to throw a bomb and to see one of his playmakers make a play for him. Like, just see, like, you have good athletes on your team. Let them go be good athletes and let them go make plays, especially against the Northwesterns of the world, where you have better athletes than them, right? Like, that 50-50 ball is probably more like a 60-40, 75-25 ball, because you have better athletes once it's, one-on-one. And I'm with you, Sean. I almost would have hoped to see an interception this past week, as silly as that sounds, just because maybe it loosens them up a little bit, gets the first one out of the way, right? Like a breakfast ball, when you tee off on your first tee, like, you just get that first slice into the woods out of the way. And then you don't have to worry about, embarrassing yourself the rest of the day, because you've already done that. Be curious to see kind of how that changes. And I thought the West Virginia game kind of would have alleviated that. But I mentioned this on Twitter. The yards per attempt and the way we've been so conservative with the football reminds me a lot of the 2021 offense. Because if you remember, Sean, going into the Iowa game, Sean Clifford was taking care of the football, like, really well, like kind of the same thing, like not taking a lot of chances, checking down quite often, and people were like, oh, yeah, Sean Clifford's doing the right thing. He's checking the ball down. He's not taking any risk, and he was rewarded for that. But there's kind of two differences to that. Number one, Sean Clifford had a little bit more mobility. He could do things with his legs. And that 2021 offense also struggled because they couldn't run the football the way this offense can. But Drew Aller has a better arm than Sean Clifford. And Drew Aller can afford to take some more of those chances because, like you said, he can throw, and we've seen it where he's able to put the football in a spot where his guy wasn't really that open, but he made him open. Or he was late with a throw, but because of his velocity, he was able to fit that in. I actually have a couple examples of that today that I wanted to show. So I think you're 100% right, but I am a little bit nervous because that yards per attempt is really low. And the way I saw Northwestern playing against us, they basically were playing zone on early downs and putting a bunch of guys in a box, stop the run. And then as soon as they got them in 3rd and long, they went man coverage and said, 2 safeties deep. Can you throw a post route? Can you throw a seam route to beat us? Because we don't think you're even going to throw it. And then we're going to eventually get to you, or you're going to check it down, and it's a 3rd and long, and we'll just make the tackle. And that was honestly pretty successful. Like, they were able to get Penn State off the field multiple times. So I'll be curious to see how that changes. Again, Sean, I don't really know like how much of that is he doesn't want to, or if we just haven't seen it yet. And I'm curious how worried they are. But I think you hit it on the head, and I have some good film to show that. I will say this about the receivers. They've got to do a better job in man coverage and getting open. And James Franklin mentioned that a little bit as far as getting separation. I think he literally said separation in the post game press conference. So I think getting Trey Wallace will be back. I will say this: Dante Cephas, this was like his. And it's not his last opportunity by any stretch of the imagination, but this was a big opportunity for him that I don't think he necessarily completely took advantage of, because he had a lot of snaps. And although the Big Ten Network said that Trey Wallace started, Dante Cephas started again for the 2nd straight week, and he had that big catch on 4th and 6, but otherwise just wasn't on the same page with Drew Aller.
Yeah. I was actually about to say something very similar. I think that was really good. The dig route to Cephas, I mean, I was kind of like, finally, we're going over the middle. Like, throw the ball over the middle. And because it feels like it's the same few plays all the time. It's Drew checks down in the curl. Drew checks down to the flat. It's all, or Drew checks down to Nick Singleton. And it's just like, dude, like, you don't need to be a check down Charlie. I mean, you don't have, like, you see that a lot with quarterbacks that just are blessed with the good arm. Like, they just take the check down because they don't trust their arm. Now, I think Drew trusts his arm. It's just a matter of not being afraid to make a mistake here and there. And because we've seen him make these tough throws in the tight windows. The KLS touchdown against West Virginia, that was a very, very tight window, like 50 yards away, and he nailed it. So he could make these throws. That play on the dig route, one of the few nice plays by Dante Cephas on Saturday, does a nice job getting open, but still, that's a tough throw through traffic. So
the one to Keandre Lambert-Smith on that 3rd and 10.
That was another
one.
Put
on the outside shoulder. It was a perfect throw, a laser.
That was another one. So he could do it. I just don't know why he chooses not to most of the time. And could it have something to do with the receivers not getting open? Of course it could. But like I said, sometimes you have to learn the fine art of throwing guys open and trusting your guys to make a play. Now, to be fair to Drew, the one time he finally, we take a shot, and Cephas, it's not a perfect throw, but I think it was a great throw. I think I would still put it at like an 8.5 out of 10. It's right in his hands, and he drops it. And at that point, I was like, God, I'm starting to feel bad for Dante Cephas, because it was just a tough day at the office for him. And I think that would have done a ton to his confidence. It would have done a ton to Drew's confidence as well. And it just sucks seeing that. And then a friend of the pod, Joe, gets hurt, and it's just bad play all around. So
Yeah.
I want to see him take more of those shots, because
Right.
if you just keep going back to the well, because it's going to happen eventually.
And they don't set him up sometimes for very much success, because they run on first down, they run on second down, and they throw it on third down. And then that's it. If they get a complete set, they keep going, then they run the ball again. So I thought they did a better job in the second half of throwing the ball on earlier downs, and getting him some confidence. It's hard to go out there, throw the ball on 3rd and 10, incomplete pass, come off the field, come back on, throw the ball one time, come off the field. You got to let him warm up a little bit, get him some early easy throws, which I don't think we've ran very many bubble screens as of late either, which I thought we did against West Virginia a lot more. We haven't seen that trip set with the running back and tight end since then either. Just some things that I think they have in their playbook that we haven't maybe seen, and maybe that's on purpose. They did get the running backs involved in the passing game. Nick Singleton led the team with 6 catches, and he did a good job when Northwestern was just giving them 5-6 yards, hitting Nick Singleton, letting Nick Singleton run for a first down. He did that, I think, at least twice. So that was good. But no, I agree, Sean. When he throws it with conviction, he absolutely throws it and throws it well. The other one I wanted to mention was the Khalil Dinkins catch. I mean, that ball had to be exactly where it was. And it's almost like Khalil Dinkins had like magnets on his gloves, because the ball just like sucked right into his gloves. It was a perfect throw. So he has the ability. I almost feel like sometimes when he has the adrenaline going and he's backed up into a corner, that's when he actually throws the ball better. Because we saw it on that 4th and 1 to Dinkins. We saw it on that throw to Keandre Lambert-Smith when the pass rush got there and he had to step up, and he wasn't thinking. He just did it, right? And so I just think he's, maybe he's got to shut off the brain a little bit and just go out there and let that thing fly. Let the effer fly, says Beetle. Thanks to some of y'all in the YouTube chat, but it's difficult, right? Because Sean, at the end of the day, you're happy you don't have turnovers, but I think there's more to what we've seen with this offense so far, and it's not just the receivers, it's not just the quarterback. It just hasn't been there yet. But at least in my opinion, it just seems like you have all the things to make a fire. It just hasn't ignited yet, right? Like, you're frustrated a little bit. You've been working hard to get this fire going, but it doesn't seem like you're missing pieces, right? It doesn't seem like you're missing the flint. You're missing the spark. It seems like you have it all there. It just hasn't all really started yet. But you have the ingredients necessary to make it happen.
Yeah, and that's a great way to put it. Great analogy. And Donnie kind of touched on that last week too. Like, it's not like these guys forgot how to play football. And am I expecting more from the skill position guys? Yeah, especially Singleton when we get into the run game. Need more from you, man. And when you now, like you said, in the passing game, Nick Singleton's definitely improved. Like, he's gotten a lot better as a receiver, but it's just the run game. You need more from you. And as we said, when Harrison Wallace gets back in the lineup, I'll feel a lot better about these receivers. But I think this coaching staff really only trusts 3 guys. I think at receiver, they trust KLS, Harrison Wallace, and Liam Clifford. And Liam Clifford's kind of limited. He's just not very fast, and he could get open. He catches the ball. He doesn't make a ton of mistakes, but he's limited in what he can do. So I think that's the issue. Is there's trust issues with the coaching staff, and there might be trust issues with Drew Aller. I mean, him and Cephas had another miscommunication this week, and it seems like these miscommunications are happening more and more with Cephas than anybody else. So I think there's a lack of trust there too. So
let's go running backs.
Yeah, let's just get right into the running game.
So Katron Allen obviously came out. I think he actually ended up with a pretty solid yards per carry before he left. But overall, the running game kind of left a little bit to be desired. Allen ended up with 4.5 yards per carry on his 6 carries. Nick Singleton was under 4 yards per carry. He had 21 rushes for 80 yards. He ended up with over 120 total yards and 2 touchdowns, but nothing fantastic there either. As a whole, Penn State ended up with 134 rushing yards. Northwestern's not a very good rush defense team, so we thought that number would be higher. My bold prediction was for Nick Singleton to have a $150 himself, which did not happen. So it's frustrating there. Now I will say this. Again, I think Penn State is kind of running into the teeth of the defense sometimes. And I'm not sure if they're doing it on purpose or not, but I assume they know football better than me. In fact, I know they know football better than me. But sometimes they're running into numbers that don't make sense. And it's not always a numbers game, but I think as far as getting confidence for your backs, you want to make sure you're not running into an 8-man box. And it wasn't necessarily obviously an 8-man box, but the Northwestern safeties, especially on first and second down, were filling immediately. Like we can watch some film in a second here, but they were not scared to come up pretty much on snap. Like they weren't worried about play action over the top. They were going to be wrong before they changed anything. And so next thing you know, Nick Singleton's having to, he might hit the hole, but then now there's a linebacker and a safety there instead of maybe just a linebacker there. But there were times, at least 2 or 3 times, where maybe Nick Singleton ran into his own offensive lineman and didn't see the hole or didn't see the cutback. And those are the times you're just a little frustrated because Eric Holmes here on YouTube says, like, offensive line is a big concern. I don't think the offensive line is a big concern, to be honest with you. Again, you're on your third string left guard right now in Vega Ione. And all in all, I think the offensive line played pretty well, especially in pass blocking. I thought they did pretty good most of the time. Cade Wallace had a big old lay there at the end of the first half. But all in all, the offensive line did pretty solid in pass pro, and there were holes to be hit in run blocking. And like I said, a lot of times they were going up against 7, 8-man fronts, and they were able to get enough. And they didn't get stuffed. They didn't get stuffed again on 4th and shorts, 3rd and shorts at all. They're able to pick up the first down over and over again. Is it perfect? No. But as far as like trying to put blame, I'm actually pretty okay with the offensive line. I think the running game is just I kind of like the passing game, John. I think maybe we're thinking too much about this. I think everyone just needs to stop thinking for a game and just go play football. And I think that would, like, go be an athlete. Just pretend it's backyard football and go be an athlete. Don't worry about trying to hit the right hole. Nick Singleton, just go out there and run. Just go run.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I don't think the run game, and Cory and I discussed this off the pot a little bit. I don't really put the run game, I guess it's, you want to say struggle, okay. I don't really put that on the offensive line as much because there's only one back that's seen a big drop off from last season, and it's been Nick Singleton. He's averaging 3 yards less per carry than last season, and that is a huge amount. He was averaging almost 7 yards a carry last year, which is insane. He's down to 3.8, and Katron is averaging 4.4 yards a carry, and that's a little less than a yard a carry, but he's still 4.4 you'll live with. And Katron's not the home run threat. He's going to hit singles. He's going to hit doubles. That's what he does, and I haven't really seen much of a drop off. Trey Potts is actually averaging more than he averaged last season with Minnesota. So the issue seems to be in the run game. In my mind, it seems to be a Nick Singleton issue. And again, do I think it's fixable? I do. I think he's got to get back to doing what he does, and I think there was a big drive to try to get him not to bounce it outside as much. I think he's got to kind of forget about that and just go do your thing. Like Cory said, kind of just be an athlete, do your thing. I see a lot of people say they think he's slower this year. I don't really think so, or that he put on too much weight. Again, I don't really see that. I just don't think he's gotten the opportunity to bounce it outside and really show off his speed. He's never been like Saquon, where he could he's super shifty. K-Tron's actually more shifty than him, and that's always been the case. He's more straight line speed, kind of like Journey Brown. So that's sort of his thing, and he really hasn't gotten the opportunity to do it this year. I would like to maybe see maybe a bubble screen for Nick Singleton here and there. Maybe something like that to get him
even
going.
The outside
pitch.
Zones.
Yeah, an outside zone. Yeah.
The outside zones against Northwestern even worked. I think they ran 2 and had success with it. And yeah, I agree, Sean. As far as like lost a step, the West Virginia game, he caught a pass out of the backfield, and I saw him accelerate and get around the corner. And I was like, no, he's actually might even be faster. He just hasn't had a chance to really put the burners on. So I'm not really worried about that either. 100% agree. Definitely don't think he has that same lateral quickness as Saquon, but he didn't have that last year. He just needs to hit that hole and go. And the thing is, right now, I don't know how often he gets the full speed, right? And so he just needs to get a chance to get there. That's why those outside zones are better. But again, the coaching staff isn't stupid. They know this. They know Nick Singleton probably better for outside zone. You can't just always run outside zone because then they'll pick up on those things if Nick Singleton's in the game. So you got to hammer it home inside too. But it seems like they're doing a lot of inside zone with both backs. And I just think maybe you want to see it more. But I'm not ready to freak out. But mostly it's because, Sean, we know that it's there, right? We know that Nick Singleton has those explosive plays against good talent. We saw it against Auburn. We saw it against Utah. Like, we know that he has that ability. And that's what I keep coming back to. If this was like his sophomore year for like a normal running back and he didn't have that crazy freshman year and people are like, oh, he's an overrated, top recruit, whatever, you could maybe make that argument. But we already have his resume. We've already seen his history. We know what he's capable of doing. And so I'm not too worried about him getting back there. I was wrong about it happening against Northwestern, but I think he's due. And I don't want to use like a baseball analogy, but in a way, not in the same way that Saquon Barkley was a home run hitter, because Saquon would shimmy and shake and he might lose 5 yards and then he might score a touchdown. Nick Singleton's at least getting you positive yards every time. I know it's not as much as K-Tron, but he's still getting you positive yards. But the same kind of idea. Like, he's gonna be due for one. He probably already is due for one. So and it's not gonna matter when that hole is there and when he hits that hole. It's not gonna matter if it's Ohio State, if it's Michigan, or if it's UMass. He's gonna take it to the house regardless of who it is. And that to me is a huge benefit and why you got to keep giving the carries and trust the process that he's gonna figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, he's gonna hit that home run ball again, and he seems frustrated right now too. And something that the media members have said, like, Nick's a quiet kid. Like, he's quiet. He's a little soft spoken, and he's a humble kid. But they said he seems tense and a little angry, and I get it. He's just not having the year he thought he was going to have so far. But I think all he needs is a little shot of confidence, and he's going to be fine. And look, there are such things, guys, as a sophomore slump. Like, sometimes guys start the year and it's like, what is this? And especially when he didn't really, the college game came pretty easy to Nick Singleton. And that's a rare thing in college football, that the game just comes very naturally to him. And he had as good of his freshman year as Saquon Barkley, and there are very, very few guys who could say that. So I think he'll be all right. I just think he needs to see a big run. It's kind of like when you're struggling punting the ball and all you need is one ball to go in and then you're good. And I think that's kind of where he's at right now.
Yeah. Good news. Already has more catches and yards than he had last year in the passing game. That was one thing he wanted to improve on, was being more of an asset in the passing game. He's already, again, more catches. He's got 13 catches, had 11 last year. He has 111 yards receiving. He only had 85 last year, and he's matched that with one receiving touchdown as well. So, he has 7 total touchdowns on the year, Sean. He had 13 last year. So he's on pace to have more touchdowns this year than last year, which at the end of the day, I know that the yardage isn't there, right? But he's still scoring points. I think he's still like top 40, top 50 in the country in total points right now. So he's contributing to this team. And that's what I was trying to say on Twitter. Like, if that's a Nick Singleton bad game and he's over 100 total yards and 2 touchdowns, like that's not a bad place to be. Like that's a bad game. I think Penn State's going to be okay in the long run. Obviously, that's not going to be enough for Ohio State, right? But if that's a bad game for Nick Singleton, that's not too shabby.
Yeah, he's definitely a weapon still, and he's no doubt better in the receiving game this year. Like last year was Kane Allen was easily a better receiving back than he was. And that's an area of his game that I know he worked on all spring and all summer, and he has improved, and he does deserve a lot of credit for that, especially with help. And it helps out Drew immensely to be able to have that safety valve. And he's definitely utilized Nick. And then I think we got to talk about Trey Potts. Trey Potts looks really, really good. Really good. And it's to the point that some people are saying he's RB1. He's not, but I'm still going to appreciate what he's doing. And guys, especially if Katron, and it really makes me feel good, like if Katron went down on Saturday and Trey Potts stepped in and he did a phenomenal job on Saturday. He was the best back on Saturday, no doubt about it. It just gives me a lot of confidence in that room that I feel like we could win with 3 guys. And you don't have to panic if we don't have one of the top 2 guys available. And he's been an excellent pickup for us.
We were so excited when they got Trey Potts. And Sean, I love that you brought up that his yards per carry is actually up from when he was at Minnesota. I think that's an interesting point. Only 3 rushes, but 21 yards, average 7 yards per carry. Had the big time touchdown run. It was nice to see a broken tackle against Coco Uzima, who's a good safety for Northwestern. And then obviously had that touchdown catch for 30 yards from Bo Pabila to kind of cap things off. So
wasn't an easy catch either.
No, he's done it all. He has a touchdown passing, a touchdown rushing, a touchdown receiving this year, all of which have taken place in the state of Illinois. So there's probably some sort of Big Ten West joke in there, like he's doing his best against Big Ten West opponents. But no, I agree. It makes you feel a lot better about it. And actually, the show is in part titled for him. So shout out to Trey Potts, because that's big time. There's no doubt about it.
By the way.
Yeah.
Was it a fake knee?
Oh my God. The fake knee stuff. Look, you know what? Do we have anything else that we need to cover offensively? I think we covered everything I wanted. I mentioned Malik McLean only had 1 snap. I want to mention that again. Not sure where that's at. The Illinois game was kind of where we saw the end of what we've seen from Malik McLean as of late. Oh, the only other thing I wanted to mention, Penn State so far in the year, 10 for 11 on 4th down. Yeah. So doing a really good job as far as moving the sticks when you have to. Just around the country, more teams are going for it on 4th down than ever before. The 4th down conversion percentage across college football is actually right around 66%, which has actually dropped from the last couple of years. But Penn State's doing a really good job of moving the sticks. They love the quarterback push. Sean, we saw the quarterback sneak again from the 3-yard line.
Yeah, not a fan.
I don't get it. That one to me is seriously the most puzzling one of all.
Yeah.
Are they trying to catch him off guard? I don't know.
Probably, but why do it 2 straight weeks?
Yeah. I'm not sure about that one.
Because then it's on film. Like, why would you try it again, especially when it didn't work last time?
That to me is one of the more puzzling things. Like, I can kind of justify or say, like, whatever, but the quarterback sneak from the 3-yard line, unless it's Drew Aller, like, calling his own number kind of thing. Like, if you get up there and you think you can QB sneak it. But it wasn't like there was an obvious, like, for example, there's not an offensive lineman in the A gap to the right of you, and you think you can, basically combo block up and you can get yourself in, fine. but they had it well defended. So I don't know. That is one I'm like kind of confused on.
Yeah, I don't get it either. I do want to say we were over 30 points again. That's 10 straight now. So that's
12
12.
straight.
Oh, excuse me, 12 straight. So we're through a whole season worth of games going over 30 points. And I think we're getting close to the Big Ten record. I believe Ohio State has it. So I would love to I would love to pass them out. Obviously we got a test with Ohio State coming up, and Ohio State has been very good on defense this year. I think they're better than they were last season. So I hope that continues. And if it does with this defense, I mean, there aren't a lot of teams this defense is giving up over 30 points to. So if this could continue, I think we're going to be sitting pretty come early December.
No, I agree 100%. And also, Penn State's on a 10-game winning streak, which is the longest in James Franklin's tenure. So he's longest in his tenure and the longest since, I believe, 2007, 2008. So just in general, it's been a long time since Penn State's won this many games back. And I know someone out there's already going to say, well, they haven't played anybody. Well, that includes two ranked opponent wins, too. So you can take that to the bank with you as well.
One was a top 10 win, too. Yeah.
One was in the Rose Bowl for all the haters out there.
Yeah.
Let's get into some film, if that's cool with you, Sean.
Let's do it. It's movie time, kids.
I want to start with I know I just picked on Mike Yurcich for like the QB sneak from the 3-yard line, but I will say this: I loved the fake QB sneak here, and I want to show that first. So let me transition over here. Okay, I'm calling this the fake tush pass. I should call it the fake tush push pass. There we go. So here's the fake tush push pass for touchdown. So as you can see already, Nick Singleton's going to come in motion as if he's going to push, and defense is thinking, okay, they've already ran it from the QB sneak from the 2-yard line before, so they might do it again. But instead of the tush push, now Singleton just flares out. And you're basically saying Singleton is faster than number 35. Don't even care if you cover it. He's going to beat you to the pylon. And that's exactly what he does. Like, I'm faster than you. That's a touchdown. I don't think they run that with Katron Allen because it's probably not as successful. But nice, easy pitch and catch for a touchdown. And then I just want to say also, Trey Potts, unsung hero on this play. Look at that great block right there. If he doesn't get into the ground, this ball might have to have more air on it. This ball might be overthrown. This ball might even be picked off, depending on what happens. But the perfect cut block gives Drew Aller the perfect window, and it's just pitch and catch right there. So I love that play. Simple enough. And Sean,
yeah,
I wanted to say other thing. I'm not related to this play, but also about the running game. The only other thing I can think of that maybe Penn State misses is Brenton Strange and blocking as far as getting the next level goes. Him and Juice Scruggs did a really good job of blocking linebackers, and I do think they missed that a little bit.
They do. There's an obvious difference between Theo and Warren and Brent Strange. I mean, Brent Strange, part of the reason he was taken in the second round is he's an elite tight end blocker. So, yeah, that's a great point.
Okay, next play. So, third quarter here, 3rd and 2. They have trips to the left side of the field, and they have 2 tight ends to the bottom of your screen. And this, to me, is just what you'd call like a scat concept. So basically all they're going to do is they're going to run 2 routes where number 7 is. And they're basically going to say whoever number 7 doesn't take is who is going to get the football. And it's really simple. It's an easy read. They do it with Sean Clifford all the time because you take half of the field away and you just focus on one player and you just throw it to wherever he's not. So here we go. But what's interesting to me is Drew Aller kind of gets away with one here, in my opinion, because he is locked on to Ty Warren the entire way. And as you see, Northwestern's actually in zone, And that number 7 has his eyes on the quarterback, has his eyes on Drew Aller. And Drew Aller never looks at Theo Johnson. And he's eyeing Warren the whole way. And I don't know if 7 doesn't completely trust his eyes here, but if he jumps this, instead of just continuing to get depth, he picks this off easily because Drew Aller never even looks at Theo Johnson. And I think 7 actually plays this pretty well as far as not making it obvious who he's going with. But you could actually argue that the throw should have went to Johnson here. Now, again, this is where Drew Aller's just absolute velocity makes this a non-issue because he throws this on the line and actually throws it with some anticipation, and it hits Warren as soon as he turns around. But you could argue in the situation where that safety's playing a little bit smarter, is a little bit quicker, that this ball is actually picked off. So I like the scat concept here. I don't know necessarily if Drew Aller makes the right decision, and he definitely locks on a little bit to Ty Warren here. So like the play call, I think it was a smidgen risky as far as how it worked out. But I thought this was kind of the first time we saw this true scat concept so far this year.
Yeah, and this is what we need more from Drew Aller. Not locking on a receiver, but trust your arm. Like, you could make these tight window throws, especially to guys that he trusts. He absolutely trusts Tyler Warren. So don't be afraid to fire it in there. And like I said, I just want to see more of it. So overall, got the arm, you can get away with it, do it.
Okay, so this was the miss to Theo Johnson, and I thought actually Drew Aller did lack a little bit of touch compared to previous games, but I don't necessarily want to focus on the play itself. Like, yes, he misses, good pass protection all in all. Nick Singleton does a decent job picking up here. He actually maintains it pretty well. I'll give him a pretty good grade on that. As far as picking up the full speed guy, great blocking elsewhere. Everyone else did a fantastic job. So everything's good about this. Kind of the same little scat concept there as well. You have the high and you have the low, and you're supposed to throw it to whoever you're not. That one, again, kind of a little bit better as far as deciding. Instead of 2 tight ends, now he has Clifford and Johnson, but the same concept, right? You're going to throw it to wherever the guy in the bottom right of your screen isn't. And he chooses correctly that time. Do you see how that corner was more on Clifford that time? That was 100% the right throw, and it just barely missed. But what I actually wanted to show you is on the top of the screen, I think Dante Cephas runs an incorrect route here as well. Because Keandre Lambert-Smith's going to run a corner flag route to the back pylon. Typically, and I could be wrong here, but typically you don't want to run an out route combo with that. And I know it looks like they kind of do on this side, but in my opinion, on the far side of the field, you don't want to run that to the far side of the field. Nothing's in the middle of the field here. Maybe it's just a mirror play. Maybe it didn't really matter. But in my opinion, on the far side, you would like to see Dante Cephas maybe actually carry the safety that is going to be on Keandre Lambert-Smith into the middle a little bit with like a deep slant, and maybe give Keandre Lambert-Smith the entire end zone to work with as far as making a move. But when he runs that route, now there's no chance that Drew Aller is going to possibly be able to throw that ball to Keandre Lambert-Smith. Now, I don't think he was ever going to anyway, but just the concept that, hey, you can't throw that ball because now Dante Cephas has ran his defender underneath. And now Drew Aller has to hit that back pylon. He's got nowhere else to play with. And from that angle on the wide side of the field, it's a lot harder to throw than the one he tries to make with Theo Johnson. But yeah, and again, Dante Cephas has had this happen to him a couple times. Very well could have just been a mirror route, but I'd like to see him maybe go inside there and let Keandre Lambert-Smith have the entire field to work with.
Yeah, it might have been going to Theo or Liam the whole way, and it was just whoever was going to get open. But yeah, I would say there's a good chance that was an incorrect route because, like you said, it gives KLS no chance to make a play because you're not throwing it over there at all because there's way too many people. There's way too many guys over there to make a throw to the far side of the field. So I agree with you. I think it was probably an incorrect route, but we also are in the huddle, so I don't know.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Okay, so here's what I think is good by Nick Singleton. So this is going to be kind of an outside zone here. And this is where Nick Singleton flourishes. Like, this is where you want to see more of. Just let him get to the outside and run. That to me doesn't look like a slowed down Nick Singleton. He looks fine there. But look, every offensive lineman just takes a step to their left and then blocks whoever crosses their face. And it's so simple, yet so beautiful. And good blocking downfield. Theo Johnson does a good job, and it's an easy pickup. So that to me is what you want to see more of. You can't run that all the time, but Nick Singleton picks up those 7 yards like it's nothing. Like, those other guys probably should have had an angle, and he picks it up no problem. So that to me is when Nick Singleton flourishes. I wanted to show that one. And then one more offensively. Then I wanted to show one or two defensive plays. If I can find. Go ahead. No, you got it.
You could believe this. I saw, now, full disclosure, this was on a message board, so good luck. People saying, oh, that linebacker caught him. No, the linebacker had a good angle. He made a good play on it.
Yeah, that's crazy.
He just took a good angle. So that's why he didn't catch him from behind. He had an angle.
Here's where I'm saying that I don't think they're running the bubble enough. They ran the bubble a decent amount against West Virginia. I feel like they haven't really ran it very much at all the last couple of weeks. Maybe they don't trust the blocking. I don't really know. Now, this is kind of a hard throw for Drew Aller because running back's on his left. So he actually has to completely turn around to make this bubble throw. But look at the defense right now. Like, Northwestern's not even ready to cover this bubble. Like, you have 3 against 2. The inside linebacker or outside linebacker, but the inside defender there on Caden Saunders is not going to be able to cover Caden Saunders.
Not even looking at him. Yeah.
And so, I mean, again, not necessarily the wrong side, if you will, but even before the snap, you could look out here and say, my 2 guys block these 2 guys, get outside leverage. Caden Saunders is going to beat that other guy to the end zone, let alone the first down. And so that wasn't even in the cards. But I just wanted to show that because now Potts picks up the first down, everything's great. But to me, you have a better chance. Look at the safeties creeping in on that right away. Like, you had that because the offensive line did a really job actually getting to the second level, and Potts runs through somebody. But you're asking Potts to pick that up on his own. I think you actually have a touchdown at the bottom of your screen here. Like, Caden Saunders, the best athlete, best receiver in his class. Kind of like to see him get the ball in space there.
I agree with you. That's a very good observation, Corey, because we have numbers down there. If in really, let's say KLS and or Omar, yeah, one of them doesn't hold the block. Well, I trust Caden Saunders to be able to beat that other guy. I just think he's a superior athlete. So yeah, I think you're right. I think that's a touchdown.
Okay, I'll have more of these on the film. I actually went through a lot of film. Obviously, people on podcasts recommend you check out this part on YouTube. I think we do a pretty good job of describing it. The defense did really good. I could do defensive plays for days, so there'll be more on Twitter for the defensive plays. But I wanted to show you this play because I've been a little critical of Kalen King so far as coming up and helping with run support and tackling. He had 2 really good plays back-to-back where he did fantastic. So this is a 3rd and 12. Northwestern's going to run the bubble. Again, they believe right now that they actually have the numbers advantage here. But watch Kalen King just get downhill, and he doesn't make the play, but he ruins the play. I mean, he fires out of a cannon right here. I mean, look at that. Look at that step right now. I mean, that is just coming and coming now. And he blows up the play, gets the outside contained. Look at him fight with his left shoulder. I mean, he can make the play on this. Daquan Hardy does a great job too. But Kalen King, to me, actually made that play. And that's kind of what we saw in the Ohio State game last year because he did a lot of that. And I thought maybe he was a little hesitant. He wasn't hesitant at all against Northwestern coming up and doing stuff like that. That to me was really impressive. I actually have another example of that right here. So same concept, 3rd and long. He's off coverage. They're bailing. He actually, again, should get beat here. It's 3-on-2 right now. And he comes up, fights outside, and makes the play. It's a 2-yard gain. Now, KJ Winston does a great job too. But, I mean, this is just – you're giving up the bubble on 3rd and 15. Like, Northwestern should expect to probably get at least 5 to 10 yards here because safety bails. Like you should be able to pick up a decent amount of yardage here. And KJ Winston and Kalen King absolutely blow this up. So back to back plays I showed you here where I thought Kalen King did a fantastic job against the bubble. That makes me feel really good because we know Ohio State's going to try to do that bubble stuff as well.
Yeah, those are NFL instincts right there, and that's what we've meant last year when comparing Kalen versus JPJ, and that Kalen is just so fundamentally sound, and he could just he could do it all. He is a complete cornerback, and just those instincts. That's something that can't be taught. And that's something that's going to translate really, really well to the next level. And it's going to translate really, really well to defending Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah. Yeah. And people are going to say, well, he hasn't done much in pass coverage like that. He hasn't really had the ball thrown to it that much.
And
but
the pass rush is getting home.
Yeah.
At such a high clip.
Right. And he doesn't get a lot of credit for that. Like, they played man coverage a lot on 3rd and long. And at times they didn't. The times they went like softer zone and prevent was the times that they actually gave up those long 3rd downs, which is kind of a good segue into the defense. When they went man coverage, they locked them up and that pass rush got home. I wouldn't necessarily call them coverage sacks because it was like water on rocks, but they did a really good job in coverage. I didn't show it. I'll show it on Twitter when I do the film breakdown tomorrow. But Northwestern ran a bunch of pick plays. They ran a bunch of like obvious offensive pass interference plays that the officials kept their flag in their pants for, which is a little annoying because I know Penn State's got called on those offensive pass interferences quite a bit. There's even on that slant pass that Northwestern eventually scored a touchdown on, the receiver clearly pushed off Johnny Dixon with his one arm to get open on that slant route. And that wasn't called either, but I'll show those later on. But Sean, the defense, we talked a lot about them already. I don't think we'll have as much to say because they're playing so damn good right now. Talked about the sacks and all that, but they did give up some long 3rd downs. They're still doing really good on 3rd down, but there were some frustrating long 3rd downs that they did allow. I think like a 3rd and 22, a 3rd and 16. One was on a play where Curtis Jacobs and Kalen King both missed the tackle, which 2 senior-led guys or experienced-led guys, that shouldn't happen. One was on a quarterback scramble with the backup quarterback is what it is. But that's really the only thing you can harp on, Sean, is giving up those couple 3rd downs. And there's plenty of other good 3rd downs that they did really well on.
Yeah, similar to the 3rd and long against Illinois, where we almost gave it up, but it was like 3rd and 20 plus, and we were able to just stop. I forget if it was Luke Altmaier at that point, but anyway, yeah. And there was the one drive where we just didn't tackle well. They went down, scored a touchdown. It's gonna happen. You can't expect your defense to just pitch shutouts week after week. It's just not realistic. God, teams are going to have a lot of trouble with the defensive line when we have DDS, Chop, and Adisa Isaac on the field at the same time. Like it's going to be a real struggle for them dealing with all that speed, all that skill. Plus, you have Abdul Carter lurking. It's a lot to ask an offensive line to be able to hold those guys off, and we saw that a lot. We saw that a lot this week against Northwestern. We did see it against Iowa, but almost every 3rd down, those 3 guys came on the field, and it's such a luxury to have.
Want to talk stop you real quick?
Yeah.
Just want to give a shout out to our main man, Amin Vanover, too. I thought he played a lot of snaps, and I thought he looked really good. And I think you talk about Trey Wallace, like having to probably, if he can, play against UMass. Amin Vanover didn't play a couple games early in the year. I think you can see a lot of Amin Vanover in UMass just to get him game ready for Ohio State. And he already looks pretty game ready, to be honest with you. Like, he looks like a force to be reckoned with. And I'm also just so damn happy to see Adisa Isaac, what seems to be at full strength, because he is like the guy we wanted him to be. And then the injuries and whatever else, like he's having that kind of year right now. He's honestly playing himself into the first round right now. Like, knock on wood. Like, he's playing that well, and it definitely helps having those other guys you mentioned. But I wanted to give a shout out to me and Vanover and Zariah Fisher too. Like, Zariah Fisher, when I think you tweeted this, like, when your fifth defensive end comes in the game and it's Zariah Fisher, he made those offensive linemen, like, there's one play, I think technically they got the pass off, but Zariah Fisher, like, just quick hands, just made easy work of the left guard and got right to the quarterback. I mean, it was just Zariah Fisher's like coming off the bench. That's really good stuff for them. And Zariah Fisher was a highly ranked player coming into Penn State. Just didn't really know if he was a linebacker or a defensive end at first, and then he had the injury. But I mean, there's a lot of serious athletic potential with him as well.
Yeah, no doubt. And there's a good chance Chop goes for the NFL draft next year. Dece Isaac as well. I think we're still going to be in good hands next year because we're still going to have Amin Vanover. We're still going to have Denai Dennis Sutton. He's going to be on an All-American campaign himself. We're still going to have Zariah Fisher. Smith Milbert hopefully gets healthy and will be back. So I think we're going to be fine next year at defensive end.
Just insane.
And really, it's kind of like when you'd watch those great Bama and Georgia defenses, and they'd usually always get up by a lot, like we are right now playing against weaker competition. And you'd hear the announcer say something along the lines of, well, it doesn't get any easier for the offensive line. They think they could take a break. Like, okay, Dece Isaac's out, Chop Robinson's out, Denai Dennis Sutton's out. And then you have to go against Zariah Fisher and Amin Vanover. And it's just like, at some point, that offensive line's probably like, oh my God, do they have anybody who sucks? And the answer is no. No, they don't at defensive end. And then defensive tackle, I thought Kazai Izzard had a good game. I thought this was Zane Durant's best game of the season. He was consistently disruptive. I think he had 3 tackles for loss. I mentioned the Ben Bryant sack. I mean, he was all over the field. And I think these guys, they both feed off each other and then they take stats away from each other because if you look at the stats, like I think Dece Isaac only had 1 tackle or something, and same thing with Abdul Carter. But that doesn't tell the story. Like, these guys are all flying around. Just somebody's got to make the tackle, but that doesn't mean you're not making plays. Like, these guys are all just making plays, and they're so bought into the system. And you could see it. You could see how bought in they are and how unselfish they are too. Like, nobody's freelancing out there. They're all playing within the system, and that's what championship defenses do.
Yeah. Kazai Izzard, half a sack. Amin Vanover, 2 tackles, half a sack. Abdul Carter had that really good pass breakup, by the way. I kind of forgot about that play, but you're right. Abdul Carter only 1 tackle. Chop Robinson didn't even get on the stat sheet, which is just crazy. He had a hurry, I think. But you're right.
Watch him. Yeah.
It's incredible to me that they're all flying around the field and there's so many people getting in. Kevin Winston Jr. had a really good game and had 5 tackles. That was the leading tackler. Like, they're just so many people get into the stat sheet. It's just insane to me. But you're right. Keon Wiley also had a nice sack as well. So just so many different people getting there. Jalen Reed had half a sack.
Yes. Yep.
It's just a lot of people to keep up with. And that's just, it's honestly what you wanted it to be. And I made this point, Sean, to you guys today. This defense is a 100% further ahead than they were last year. I don't know if I'm ready to say they're better like than the end product was last year, although I'm close to saying that. But 100% as far as like 5 games in, this team is definitely defensively better than they were at this point last year.
That's one of those things you could safely say, let's wait till Ohio State and Michigan before we make a declaration. Right. But yeah, they're ahead of schedule with where they were in month 1 last year, no doubt. I think we also, I texted I texted you guys during the game. I think we finally figured out Tyler Elsdon. And I thought he played well on Saturday. I thought he played well against Iowa too. And what we have to do with Elsdon is don't expect him to be a starter. And I don't mean this as like a backhanded compliment or anything. I mean a lot like Dom DeLuca. He could do situational things. We could have him in there, but you just can't put too much on his plate. And I think they finally figured out that balance. And I thought he played well. Like that fourth down stop was, I mean, Abdul went over the top too, but Elston, I saw somebody in the middle live, and I was like, who was that? It was Tyler Elston going up top like LeVar to stop the quarterback sneak. And I was like, oh,
yes.
How about that?
It's honestly confusing to make sure, like I almost mixed up. I thought that was LeVar Arrington going over the top for a second there, but it was Tyler Elston.
And then he's out in pass coverage on Cam Porter because I saw him go out and I was like, oh no, that looks bad. Because I could tell we're in man and he's matched up. I thought Franklin might call a timeout. And he stride for stride with them down the sideline, knocks the ball away. And I was like, oh, how about that? So really happy to see him playing well.
Yeah, no doubt. And like that's the thing, right? Like we think at this point King is definitely the better player, but you need the Elsons to be able to give him a blow. And when you come in, you need that. Talk about it all the time. You don't want that to drop significantly when a player comes out. And Dom DeLuca played a lot of football too. And so feeling really good. And you mentioned all the havoc and the chaos and the stats and the sacks and all that stuff. Like Abdul Carter's had a really quiet year so far. Everyone's talking about Nick Singleton's sophomore slump. But like statistically, Abdul Carter isn't where he was last year. But again, it just hasn't been that many there hasn't been that many opportunities to make plays. Like you could argue last year, like more things got to the second level for Abdul Carter to make plays on. They maybe had to rely on Abdul Carter to blitz more. Now he's almost like picking up the scraps and the leftovers. Like they'll blitz and he's kind of more QB spying and seeing if the quarterback leaks out or the running back leaks out, he'll go cover him. Like they don't have to blitz Abdul Carter as much anymore. And because they can send those defensive ends after him. So I'm hoping that Abdul Carter is saving some good stuff for later in the season, but they haven't had to rely on his splashability per se, which is a good thing because a lot of other players are making a lot of big plays right now.
Yeah, and it goes to what I was saying earlier. I just think these guys are very unselfish. Like you don't see them rushing for stats, and sometimes when you see that, and it's kind of hard to figure out when that's happening, but it's when guys are playing outside of their responsibilities, and then you're prone to give up big plays when you're not.
The cat has come and the cat has muted Sean at the same time. I don't know if you noticed, Sean, that our partner State Media posted that clip today, and the cat made the appearance at the end of the clip.
Did he really?
Yeah.
I got to check that out. I didn't see that yet.
Yeah.
Anyway, everybody's playing within the system, and that's a really positive thing to see, especially when you have as much NFL talent as we have. And there are a lot of guys that have NFL aspirations, and understandably so. I mean, I think we have 3 or 4 guys that could be first-round draft picks on this defense. And there's just not a hint of selfishness. And the only game where I really thought Abdul struggled in was the West Virginia game. And I just think he made some mistakes. He got Garrett Green got the best of him a couple times. But outside of that, I think he's played well. And maybe the stats aren't gaudy, but they don't really need to be. So, and Mitch is back. So my point is finished.
Yeah. And, talked a lot this year about, is this team going to be ready to face Michigan, more equipped to face Michigan? I think yes. Like we've seen teams now try to emulate some things that Michigan did last year. Illinois really tried to do that as far as spreading out, but then still running the football. We've seen every team run some sort of running back sweep to the outside, buck sweep, if you will, pulling 2 offensive linemen and trying to get to the outside. Every team has tried to run that in the first quarter against Penn State, and they've done a good job, and that's what Michigan likes to do. We haven't seen a team really try to throw the ball a bunch. Northwestern, I guess you can say they tried, but they didn't really have an opportunity really to throw the ball. And I don't know how many teams really are going to be able to truly throw the ball and not have the inferno of pass rushers coming after them, right? Like Ohio State, we thought, first of all, that they have two offensive tackles that are still trying to get broken in a little bit. Like, not the same two guys as last year, but we expect them to probably be able to hold up better in pass protection than Northwestern. But we really haven't seen anyone else really try to throw the ball and spread out Penn State. Even Michigan threw a lot of dink and dunks to maybe spread out the defense a little bit to then attack with the run game. So I don't know, Sean, how equipped Penn State is at this point as far as having seen an Ohio State offense, but I also don't know how much you can really prepare for a Marvin Harrison, who, by the way, KLS has a better stat line than Marvin Harrison right now, or an Emeka Ebuka, or I generally can't remember his name right
Julian
now.
Fleming.
Thank you. I seriously, like, people are like, oh, of course you couldn't remember his name. You're salty Penn State fan. But it really did. It really did get away from me for a second. But you can't emulate that with anybody, really. Like, there's not many teams. I can't think of any team, maybe Washington, as far as being able to be that much firepower. So you can't really emulate it. But I guess, Sean, like, going into the bye week, going into UMass, then eventually Ohio State, like, do you think this defense is ready for those challenges?
Well, I think we're ready for UMass. Ohio State, like you said, it's tough to emulate because if you look at the roster of quarterbacks we've played, they're not very good. So I think this team has faced some tests, which I've liked, but we haven't faced a very good passing quarterback. And I wonder how good Kyle McCord is, because this is the first time that we've been playing an Ohio State team where since before Urban, that I really didn't know about the quarterback. And I think he showed a lot of guts driving down that last minute against Notre Dame. I think he showed, because not everybody could do that on the road, hostile environment.
Could have an interception, though.
What's that?
He almost threw a pick that was dropped, to be fair.
Yeah, he did. But that fourth down play, I mean, that was money. And that showed me something right there. But for the most part, he hasn't been CJ Stroud or even Dwayne Haskins. I just haven't seen that from him yet. And I'm sure he'll get better as the year goes on. And Ryan Day's a good offensive mind, so I'm sure he's going to get better. But yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I don't think there's any more we could ask from this defense right now based on who they've played. And we really won't know until we play them. And look, the defense played really well against Ohio State for 3.5 quarters last year.
Yeah.
They had a Chernobyl-style meltdown in the fourth quarter, but outside of that, like, they played really, really well. So I hope they learned some from last season. And I think the defense is more bought in with the system than they were last year. So I think they're as ready as they could be with the competition they played.
Yeah, shout out to 12 Lionheart. Excuse me. He says he's at Wegmans live streaming the hardcore Penn State football, which is pretty cool. Don't know how long you're going to spend in Wegmans, but that's awesome. Okay.
It's a great store.
I love Wegmans.
I feel classy shopping there.
Originally I thought that store was really expensive, but I feel like the prices aren't as bad now. The only thing I really don't like about Wegmans, I really don't think their meat selection is fantastic. They have a good seafood selection, but as far as like their actual like butcher and the meat options, I think there's maybe better things out there than Wegmans. I find myself wanting more when I go to the chicken and the beef section as far as different options, but that's just me.
I like the produce there.
Yeah, produce is hard to beat.
Fire. Yeah,
hard to beat. Stop for a second. If you haven't already, please make sure to like this video and subscribe to State Media. Closing on 2,000 subscribers on YouTube, which of course is all because of just Sean and I. And make sure you watch the other two shows. In all seriousness, Lions Den, they just had Ty Warren on last week. I don't know who they have on this week. And then Brandon Bell and Christian Hackenberg's The Pocket podcast. They had Grant Haley on last week. So make sure to check out those two shows as well. And if you're listening on podcasts, make sure you're subscribed. Numbers are good, by the way. Just shout out to you guys. September was the best month ever, hardcore Penn State football wise. So thank you for that.
Yeah, yes.
And we're going to reward you. We're going to reward you guys with fan questions. Which
we don't do this often.
No, we never do fan questions. Never, ever. I don't think Tyler from Instagram, who that's all he's known by now, is Tyler from Instagram. I don't think he had a question, but I'll just read off what he says. He said, "Good morning. Couple things for the Monday podcast. I think I'm ready to hit the panic button on Nick Singleton. Less than 4 yards per carry. Saving grace, he has more catches through 5 games. That's what I just said, so that's cool. We talked about that a little bit. I think we actually have a question about that, but I think we have a couple questions about that. He says, number 2, did strength staff put too much weight on him this offseason? I actually think we answered that already. Seems a half step slower. Maybe he's thinking too much. I think we answered that too. And then number 3 says, Trey Potts will be key if Kaytron Allen has to miss some time. He's excited about him. Help me on this, guys. Thanks as always. So shout out to Tyler. I think we actually did a pretty good job answering those questions already, but always nice to have Tyler in. Oh, I didn't show. I already put the Pick'em's live for this week, by the way. I also put the Pick'em on Twitter standings as well. I can show those real quick before we get to fan questions. So I have it up. There we go. So it's even bigger. I need to start skimming it down a little bit. I said that last week. I forgot. 9 points is the best you could do. We actually had a lot of 9-pointers this week. A lot of people went perfect. If you didn't pick the spread right, it really starting to hurt you now. Like you're missing out on 2 points each time. So getting the spread pick right is actually kind of important. Difference between like an 8 and a 6, which is a big deal. Tight at top. Sean and Real Hunt Dog are tied as well as Brendan Malinovich is now at the 58 club too. So a 3-way tie at 58. I'm at 57. I separated myself from Cowboy Ribeye, who got a 7 out of 9. He's at 56, along with 4 other people are now at 56. So it's pretty tight at the top. There's obviously more than this, but I thought I would show kind of the top standings. But that's where we're at right now. Long season to go though. We still have a lot to go. So I will say this to the people that just maybe started, like maybe missed a week. I guess all I want to say is you can almost count on someone forgetting to do a week and it puts you right back into the thick of things. So don't, just because you're a little bit lower, my advice is don't give up, because I'm going to shout out Saquon Kendall. He was right in the thick of things and he hasn't done the last 2 weeks. I even added him on Twitter. And so he's fallen like sunk like a rock there. So just because you're behind doesn't mean you can't catch up. All it takes is someone forgetting 1 week. But shout out to everybody for doing that. I think we're over like 65 new people have done it this year, which is pretty sweet.
Cory's nipping at my heels.
I am. I'm right there. All right, let's get into some fan questions here.
Did you win it last year?
I did.
I thought you did.
Yeah, but we gave it to we give those things away to 3 other people, not us. But yes, I did win it. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah, you're welcome. I mean, I'm gonna win it this year, but you had last year.
So I don't want to necessarily go down the running back rabbit hole too much tonight, Sean, because I feel like we already talked about it. But I'm going to put these questions together to give them some love. So this question was asked by Devin O'Blakely. Bad offensive line, or do the running backs lack the extra burst quickness needed to elevate the run game? No doubt Singleton has straightaway speed, but it seems like he needs a bigger hole if Full has seemed to really break open a long run. And does Potts have the extra burst that is missing? Additionally, Mr. Einstein von Braun says, I'm starting to get a little worried about Nick Singleton. He looked slow yesterday getting around the edge, lacked his explosiveness from last year. Was this due to carrying the bulk of the carries once Kaytron Allen went out, or is there a legitimate concern? Brian Del Buono also added, Nick seems like he's added some bulk since last year. Maybe that's wasn't a good idea in hindsight, or is there something else going on? He seemed very tentative, trying to run between the tackles yesterday. So lots of questions on Nick Singleton, Sean. We've answered it quite a bit. Will Gamble, do we need to let Trey Potts get more carries? So I just want to group all of those questions together and just be like, not even a question as much as I think Nick Singleton is still very good. I agree with people that he hasn't had a good year so far. I disagree with people that he looks slower in the sense that, in a physical sense, that he all of a sudden isn't capable of being quick. I disagree with that. Now, do I think maybe he's hesitating a little bit or is maybe too patient? Yes. But I don't think he lost a step from an actual physical standpoint. Like, I think he's still very fast. And I'll leave it at that since I feel like we talked about it quite a bit, Sean.
Yeah. I mean, I don't notice a huge difference in his speed. I notice how we're using him is a little different. Cory brought up the outside zone. I agree. I think he could maybe start maybe a pitch here and there. Let the tight ends lead the way. Let the guards pull. Yeah, so I don't think it's necessarily a speed issue. I don't think it's because he got bigger. I just think his vision doesn't seem as good. Sometimes holes are there and he runs into blockers. That again, not really to do with the speed as much as it is his vision. And sometimes I just think he presses a little too much. But yeah, as far as and the question about Trey Potts getting more carries, I think it depends. I mean, I think there's an argument to be made he's earned carries every week, and I'm totally fine with him getting a touch or two every week or more, depending on what he does with them, because I think he's a quality back. But am I prepared to have him supplant Singleton as RB1? No, because Nick is still capable of doing some really great things, and I think he will. And I just think he's got to be patient, and his time's going to come. And his performance in the passing game has improved.
So do you pull the plug on your number one running back pick in fantasy draft? No, you don't.
No, but I have considered it with Garrett Wilson since Zach Wilson's throwing him the ball now.
Yeah, that's tough.
And I thought Aaron Rodgers was going to, and he was my first receiver picked.
I'm sorry if you guys heard that. Did you hear my little burp right there?
Oh, no, I didn't hear that.
Oh, nice. That's good. We do the show live, everybody. I thought I was muted, and I was not. But I don't think the mic picked it up, which is good. Dorito Bandit. Do we actually know what's going on with Harrison Trey Wallace? Is Penn State going to compete against the two top-ranked teams in the country? If we are going to need him. Dorito Bandit, fan of the show. Don't know if we 100% know what's going on with Trey Wallace. I think we all agree we don't officially know. We heard hobblings of an ankle injury. My guess that it's been a month now that is probably a high ankle sprain because usually those linger a little bit more. But we don't know that for sure. That's speculation. We do know we miss him, and I agree with that point. I don't know. I would venture to say, I don't know maybe who it would be better to have him back for if you had to choose between Penn State or between Michigan or Ohio State. But I would probably lean towards he's worth at least a point or two in that game. Like, he could be the difference. He could be that X factor as far as making or breaking that game. If that just means moving the sticks on a couple more third downs and keeping the drive alive and keeping, their offense off the field, I would make that argument, Sean.
Yeah. I mean, to answer your question, I don't know what's wrong with Harrison Wallace. I think it's a little weird that he keeps dressing and not playing. But Cory did, Cory did mention there's some injuries that are day to day, and you don't really know until game day legitimately if he's going to be ready to play or not. So I don't know what's going on. What was the second part of the question, Cory?
Just like He just said that we need him in order to
Oh,
beat
okay.
Michigan or Ohio State. It wasn't actually a question as much as a
Yeah,
statement of fact.
I mean, I pretty much agree with that. If this is the receivers have not played at a level that you need to play to win a Big Ten championship or to win a national championship, that hasn't happened so far. And when you don't have your number two receiver, that's going to be the case for a lot of teams. So if Harrison Wallace comes back, is playing at the level he was playing at in the first couple games of the season, yeah, I think we'll be all right. But we do need him.
Yeah. I actually like this question a lot from miles away.
I like the
I'm
name.
wondering, me too. And he has a grizzly bear as his photo, so that's cool.
A lot going on there.
I am wondering if the desire to rotate offensive line in and out hurts cohesion. Well, you don't have to worry about that as much because JB Nelson got hurt, and the most rotation you were seeing was when JB Nelson and Vega Ione were rotating. That being said, I don't think so because they rotate a bunch. They rotate a lot last year. They practice that way too, and so I don't think so. And most importantly, it's not as much rotating as you think. I mean, late in the game, yes, but Hunter Norzad's out there every play. Olu Fashanu for the last 2 games now has been out there pretty much every play, and Kane Wallace has been out there every play, and Sal Wormley has pretty much been out there every play. So there hasn't been as much rotating as you think, but I think this question would probably honestly be better suited for the receivers, but same kind of answer. Like they practice this way on purpose, and so instead of just having your ones all being cohesive, your ones and your twos should also all be cohesive as well.
Yeah, I think Franklin likes to see 6, 7, or 8 guys as starters, and that's kind of how he approaches it. I understand it. I kind of have the same exact answer as Cory. I don't think it really does. Like last year, Bryce Effner and Caden Wallace, until Caden Wallace got hurt, they were rotating. It felt like almost every other drive, and I don't. And being that, and yes, right tackle was the weak part of the offensive line last season. I don't think that was the reason why. I think they just felt the same about both those guys. So I don't think it necessarily hurts cohesion as long as you practice that way and you approach games that way.
Yeah, good point there. Already answered the one question on Allen, Wallace, and Nelson being hurt. Ted Stevens asked which receiver is going to step up. Anybody? I feel like that was more of a rhetorical question, but I feel like Keandre Lambert-Smith had a quietly good game, hit 80 yards receiving, had a first down on the run too.
He did.
2 questions I'm going to combine together. Mark Breer says, do you think the offense is just playing conservatively given the opponents, or is there an actual legitimate concern with the lack of creativity outside of a few explosive plays? And in addition to that, Lucas Powers, longtime listener, says, is Drew Aller ready to lead this team to a Big Ten win, or a big win, passing the football? Not sure if he's being too tentative with the ball, not throwing the tight windows, but he's going to need to take chances at some point. So kind of hand in hand there a little bit, Sean. Explosivity and taking chances, or is there a lack of creativity? Where do you kind of think this offense is, or what do you think the actual issue is? Obviously, you should just know the answer to this one.
Yeah, I again, I'm going to echo a lot of what I said earlier in the show. I think Drew is teetering on the line of, being safe with the ball, being a smart quarterback, which he obviously is, and being afraid to make a mistake. And I don't think you could win. I don't think you could go and beat really good opponents that way and just being afraid to make a mistake unless you have a dominant run game, like old school Bama run game. And I think when they're all playing well, I think we have a good run game. I think potentially a great run game, but I don't feel like this is Derrick Henry Bama run game. So yeah, we're gonna need Drew to make more throws, and I have a feeling, and I kind of wish we could see like the all 22 the coaches film to see, because you'd be able to see more about what exactly is being called. I think their shot plays are being called at times, and Drew is just dumping off. And I want to, and if the plays aren't being called, I want to see them called more. And not even like the 40-yard down the field plays, just the 20-yard dig routes. I want to see more of that. And Drew trusting his arm, trusting his receivers enough to go and make a play for him.
Yeah, I think we talked about that quite a bit, so I'm gonna leave it there. CFB King asks, "What's up with Kane Saunders? He was so highly recruited. Seems like he has playmaking skills. Why does he never play? Are there other options?" I can't really answer that question. I don't really know why or what. Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, they have the talent between all the receivers they have on there. Amari Evans, I can make that argument for a bunch. I have made that argument a bunch. Kane Saunders, same thing. Don't have the answer to you now.
Don't know either.
Finally, Saquon McCutcheon asks, with the sleepy starts on the road, is the Maryland game coming back into play more than we think? Before the season, I would have said Penn State wins 75% plus, but Maryland looks improved, and the Michigan game following the week paired with a slow road starts. Is this going to be a quote-unquote game? And Sean, I do want to remind you at the beginning of the year, I did say that I thought the Maryland game was more of a trap game than the Illinois game. Go back and listen. I hate when you look at me like that. However, I think I'm going to answer this the way you're going to answer this and say people are falling for the Maryland trap. And it is officially October, so it could happen this weekend as Maryland goes to Ohio State. But I think people are falling for the Maryland trap a little bit here. And maybe I'm wrong, but I am not ready to crown them contenders. And I do think there's a possibility that could be a difficult game with the Michigan game right after it. But there's going to be a lot of Penn State people at that game, and I think they'll be okay. But I understand the point, Saquon. But you should watch the Ohio State Maryland game this weekend and see if they are legit. So that's where I'm at with that, Sean.
Yeah, I'm planning on watching that because I think that's the noon game or the 3:30 game. The Red River rivalry is this week too, so I think that's on FS1 or Fox.
No, Red River rivalry is on ESPN this year.
Oh, okay. So yeah, that'll be on Fox. So tune in. I'll believe Maryland when I see it. It's October, so this is when the turtle goes back in its shell, and it's kind of what I'm expecting because that's what I'm accustomed to. They get through September and they look good, and they have looked good, but Ohio State's coming up, and I think I have a feeling they're going to give them a bit of a beat down, and maybe it's not going to be a 40-point win, but I think that Ohio State ends up winning by about 20 points. And
they did play Ohio State really well a couple of years ago at home against Ohio State. They went overtime against Ohio State.
Yeah, I remember that.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where they're at.
Yeah. So I'll believe when I see it when it comes to Maryland.
Don't know what the weather's going to be like. Don't know. And here's the thing about Maryland. By the time Penn State plays them,
is that at the shoe?
It is at the shoe.
Okay.
By the time Penn State plays Maryland, attrition's going to happen, and that's what usually honestly hurts Maryland the most. Their ones are pretty good, but their 2s and 3s are not. And so by the time Penn State plays Maryland, no knock on Talia Tagovailoa, but he usually can't stay healthy. If his offensive line deteriorates, he's usually running for his life. We don't even know what they're going to be at from a health perspective. I feel like usually when Penn State plays Maryland, they're not usually at 100%. Neither is Penn State. But again, Penn State's 2s fill in better than Maryland's 2s fills in for them. So we'll see when we get there. But good question. I think that's a fair question for how good Maryland has started. But we'll see.
We'll start to get the Twitter stirring from the 6 Maryland fans about how Loxley's a better coach than Franklin, too. That's always a yearly tradition.
Yes, I cannot wait. It's like Thanksgiving dinner comes early. Shawn, any final thoughts before we wrap this one up? Got to confirm Garrett Sickles for Wednesday, but he should be our guest picker for Wednesday's show. And then we will be back the following Monday to preview UMass, and then we'll be off on that Wednesday. So UMass preview on next Monday.
Yeah. It's I mean, obviously.
Oh wait, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm going to cut you off. You mentioned the Riley Tompkins great catch on the snap. Just also wanted to mention Zion Tracy's stop on the fourth on the fake punt. It was fantastic. So I wanted to give him a shout out too. Sorry.
Yeah, special teams had seen better days than some areas, but that was a hell of a play by Tracy. Another guy we're excited about. Yeah, I mean, look, guys, I think we were all hoping for more fireworks against Northwestern. I know I was. I know Cory was. And from the looks of it, I know all of you guys were too. But I mean, at the end of the day, you win 41-13. We cover another spread, and I know people will say, "Yeah, well, like it was a backdoor spread and all this, backdoor cover and all this," so, which is true. But like, it's not every 28-point win is created equally. So I'll take it when it happens. We did it. We got it done on the road, and now it's time for the bye week. And I don't think this bye week could have been coming at a better time. I usually like it after week 5 or week 6 because it splits the season right down the middle. And it feels like we really have 2 weeks to get right. And then we all know where we're going in 3 weeks. So, yeah, we have a great defense. Just have the offense is close. And I just hope they could get it all figured out in 3 weeks.
And the thing is, they don't have this defense is going to give them a chance against Ohio State and Michigan. Like they are going to give them a chance. And I didn't remind people that it was the turnovers that cost Penn State against Ohio State last year, not the amount of explosive plays. So you want to walk that line carefully, right? You want a little bit more explosivity, but you don't want to lose the lack of turnovers and taking care of the football. So you want to it's like if you turn up a little bit, but once you turn up, you can't go back. So you just want to slowly turn it up because if you turn it up too fast, you start turning the ball over, but you can't go backwards either. So you just want to just dial it in. Just dial it in. But they're going to have a shot regardless of what the offense is, even in what they did against Northwestern in that first half. They'll still have a shot in the second half to win, that's just how good the defense is. The offense can play really well. They might blow out those teams in all seriousness. And if there's somewhere in between, which they're probably going to be, it's going to be a game. It's going to be a dogfight. Eric Holmes, I just love this comment because I think we need more good comments like this. Disagrees with us about the offensive line, but says it's a good show, and you are correct about Singleton. I think he just needs to get a couple more runs going, get some more room to the outside, but that's the kind of stuff we like. So disagreeing, but still agreeing that our show is good. So that's what really matters. Thank you, Eric.
Appreciate that.
Eric, for those comments. And we'll be back on Wednesday night, 7:00 to do this again. But until then, we'll have the film review breakdown out on Twitter tomorrow. Otherwise, that's all I got, Shawn.
Yeah, I think we're good, Cory.
Awesome. Well, for Shawn Kane, I'm Cory Lestochi. You've been listening to Hardcore Penn State Football. Until next time, see you later.